there's a phrase that we heard throughout the course, and that was that the battle for climate change will be won or lost in Asia. And I think it's very clear that winning will not be achievable without sustainable development. And I think it's equally clear that sustainable development will not be achievable without leadership. So I think RSDD should be commended for taking on this initiative. It signals to the region that ADB is supporting this initiative. The ADB is willing to create and foster a network of leaders in the region, which is so desperately needed. We decided, because we knew communication was going to be such an important element, that we would give the audience something that was easily recognizable as a media format. So we chose CNN breaking news. And in our case, of course, CNN was carbon neutral network instead of the cable news network. And we hoped by choosing this that we would illustrate, of course, that we wanted to communicate internally, but we also want to disseminate this information externally in hopes that other organizations or businesses around the region would set similar targets for themselves. Well, I think it's very important for organizations of all types, and ADB is no exception, that sometimes we get into a habit of communicating in very similar ways and consistently. And I think especially in development and in sustainable development leadership, we're going to have to learn to be innovative and to think outside the box, because we're facing something that humanity hasn't faced before. And that's changing our own behaviors, breaking our own habits, and collectively around the world coming together and mitigating and adapting to climate change. And I think that when we communicate at ADB and we communicate on these issues, we should really stress placing emphasis on additional ways to get these messages across. And greenwashing is taking place for over a decade. When I say greenwashing, I mean it's so easy for the media to pick up and run stories and assign everything to climate change. And because of that, climate change doesn't necessarily have the connotation that it should. And instead of greenwashing everything, we should move to another way of communicating that grabs the audience's attention, makes it understandable, and translates into action for them. I've always heard that leaders are made and not born, and I think this class made it very clear, because we saw presenters that were in positions of leadership not because they were born to that, of course, but because they were either lacking a resource in their village, or they had a deep desire to protect the biodiversity in their communities, or they were carrying on a family legacy. But they came there from different paths, and they weren't leaders when they arrived, but through their journey they became leaders, and we got to see this charted out for us. And I think that it was clear from the presentations that leaders must have vision, they must have commitment, and in my opinion, above all, they must be able to communicate and to work with people.